We are very excited about the palliative care and the clinical spiritual partnership. And of course, Kathy O, our last session with Dan Resch, the DON at Laurelwood, fantastic session as we go forward with our first ever Spirituality Learn Fest, but that clinical and spiritual integration, so powerful. We came up with the tactical, practical words for care planning, no longer just an organic process between spiritual and clinical, but really going to that next phase of effectiveness, right? Emotional and physical effectiveness as it relates to hope in medicine. So we're so glad to have you. So this is very exciting. The next panel is on the chaplain. Love you guys, love my team so much, but talking about you as a core competitive advantage and a little bit about our origin. And I have dear friends and colleagues and very well-selected panelists that we've been together a long time, many of us since the beginning, and actually I'm so grateful to my panelists who have helped build the program and the department and the pillar and its success as to where it is today. So let's get started. I've got Dawne Dries, our VP of Rule 3. Donnie's in the field. She had bad problem. Dawn in the field. Donnie, hi.
When Dianne first approached us about bringing spirituality in, there were a lot of mixed emotions about bringing business and spirituality together. And I know that when we first started the chaplain program, we talked about having someone with a counseling background as well as a chaplain background. And that's how we started out in our building. And I think that probably helped us to get the acceptance of not only our stakeholders, but our residents and families, because it was about meeting them at that point of need. And I think that got that point across really quickly for us. I think one of the ways that we were able to see the progress of that early on was that we involved chaplains from our community and had like a community chaplain board that came and met at our building once a month, and they were able to talk about the needs not only in our building but also in the community, which, as you know, was one of the pieces of starting the spirituality pillar, was to involve the community as well as just taking it out into our building itself. I think one of the ways that spirituality has helped us with hospice is that before we had chaplains in our building full-time, the piece that hospice had that we couldn't meet was that spirituality piece. But as you know, funds have been cut for hospice as well as everyone else now in healthcare. And us having chaplains in our buildings at least 40 hours a week and sometimes a lot more enables us to be with the families and the residents and be there for them during that time of need. And I think that was probably the biggest piece that hospice had. We didn't. And we can meet all the other things that hospice provides. So we've actually, taken that palliative care pilot into a couple of our buildings, and we're really seeing how we can expand on that program and really show that there isn't a need to bring in any other type of provider, because we can meet all of those needs now in our buildings.
In the early days, we started with sort of the concept and the mission and vision of what the chaplaincy could look like. And I was new to healthcare, and we really started talking around the valuation of what spirituality and what a chaplain can bring. Because at that time, there was really I had a vision for a full-time chaplain army, but no one else did. I had no budget, so I knew it needed evaluation. I knew I had to be able to prove and show the value of what our encounters could bring, especially we're a for-profit world. So you remember those early, dark, beautiful days.
Yes, I do. Just like you said, it's a radical thought to bring spirituality in the workplace. My former employers would never, it still wouldn't be today, it wasn't then. And, having the pleasure of knowing Joe my entire life and knowing his radical thinking from childhood to today, typically when his vision is outspoken, it's going to come true. So there were contrarians and skeptics who wanted to debate it. So we all know what the value is. It's just how do you quantify it?
Right.
So
It was
business
quantifying,
world, right. So really, that was the thing I wanted to do, was bring a lot of people that may say, hey, I'm looking for a van, I'm looking for a renovation. We're investing resources in other things. So part of working with your team and Carol and everybody was, what type of quality indicators are we going to move? What type of impact to our stakeholders? What type of impact to our families and communities can the Chaplain program do? Knowing it's going to be there, how can we really capture the data that would convince everybody there's a huge ROI here?
And you've really helped us over time develop that quantitative piece on the scorecard. And you've been looking at the data, analyzing our scorecard, because my team, on a weekly basis, they quantify their visits. We're always working because we also want to prove the efficacy of the spiritual, because we think we're part of the business model. We're part of the QMs. We're part of that financial piece, capturing the good work that we're doing. We're part of the proper assessment. We're part of, the census piece, and the fact they're coming through our doors because they can plug into the spiritual. So talk a little bit about the scorecard and what you're seeing there.
It's interesting seeing the cross-functional dynamics. I mean, there's without question, this crosses all the domains in the home. What was fascinating is seeing that, you have 112 chaplains tracking 35 metrics each day. Since November.
And I don't think people realize we're doing that, so go ahead.
No, and so for 17 weeks, there's a ton of data to be collected and correlated. So just working with David and Stephen and yourself, just looking at the no-brainer, hospital visits, and how the visits that our chaplains are making when an elder goes back to the hospital, they're working with the families and talking to them, praying with them that everything's safe and that they return. But a lot of that relates into a marketing visit, so that's being tracked and it correlates directly. The family encounters, 3,000 family encounters in 6 months. So, just the amount of FaceTimes our chaplains are doing between community, the families, our elders, and stakeholders is incredible.
And we're still kind of looking at all those 35 metrics and what does it actually mean, and you're helping us look at some of this trend data as well.
I know in this time period since November that our returns and readmissions have gone up 15%. That's a fact. Therapy referrals, that a depressed elder doesn't want to do therapy, when one of those 400 referrals to therapy that became true but wouldn't have
from the chaplaincy.
Correct. There's a lot of valuation in there that just is our lost customers have dropped. It goes on and on. But there's a lot of information I'm getting familiar with that really we can, 35 indicators with that type of data, we can come up with some amazing factual information for our
Love you and appreciate it, because we're collecting it. We don't always know how to synthesize it. So, team, what we'll do for you in the field is we'll get some more of this great data, and we'll quantify it and get it out to you.
That's great.
Because we're just now starting that process, because we really feel like we have a good bit of data to deal with and to really get an accurate picture and depiction of what we're doing. But we are a part of your business model. Again, it's that efficacy, it's that power of what the essence of the Spirit can bring. Jeff, go ahead.
Working just like the palliative program with Kathy was talking about, just always the chaplain program, always willing to step in and try something new, innovative, different, that, we're all busy, but they're always, there, ready. Hey, how else can we impact the home as a unit? And it just works collaboratively. That's great. From the beginning, I was all in. So
you were all in.
Glad to see it up in full speed and really making an impact for our future.
You would give me pep talks, Dianne. It's I've got this vision, Vinnie, and of course and you would help me so much. I'm so grateful to you, partner. And now look where we are, 10 years later.
course.
We're the biggest spirituality department in the nation.
Right.
We've got a true, we've got
And
a true
people are
movement.
noticing this. People are taking hold. So this will be replicated, but it takes a while to get people on board. So
Yeah.
it's
And thank you for
congrats.
recognizing the chaplains. They're always willing to step in. They're always willing to take on, they're 3 feet from the bedside, but they're also an invaluable part of the IDT team in so many ways. So thanks, Vin.
You're welcome.
Jeffrey, from your perspective, I mean, he just hits on some interesting metrics and QMs. I mean, you've taken a building from a 1-star to a 5-star. I mean, you're masterful at this. So you have learned to incorporate the spirit not only in the chaplain, not only internally, but externally. So talk about some of the internal metrics, but also some of that external focus, like how you even utilize it through the survey process.
Well, spirituality to me is a universal language. Everybody has
Well said.
a spirit, and it's where they are in that spiritual journey. I could talk about when we first went to Fountain Circle, we purchased that building. Very first thing the staff there started talking about was our spirituality, when we were going to get a chaplain, and those kinds of things. So when you have that communication piece that allows you to get into that immediately, it opens that door for communication. So the second thing I would say to that is that I also think that emotional intelligence is a big piece of spirituality. And I see
Very well
most
said.
places that I go, the chaplains that I've encountered have a very high level of emotional intelligence. So when you have those two things working together, you can gather a lot of valuable information on where people are on the emotional.
Is that like discernment and almost like the piece of wisdom that Joe and I talked about yesterday in the power of the ask, and one of the asking for that wisdom, the power of discernment, and really being able to sort of feel and be self-aware of someone else's needs,
Correct.
issues. So well said. It's a core competency.
Absolutely, it is. And then the next valuable piece to that is your chaplain. And the chaplain utilizes those tools, which I use as spirituality and emotional intelligence, to give a lot of good feedback on where things are, not only with families and residents, but also staff, so that you can kind of guide where you need to go in certain areas based on that information. So it's very invaluable. Then when you're talking about...
So you really navigate. You utilize it to
Absolutely.
sort of navigate encounters.
Absolutely.
Navigate how you might say something.
Absolutely. And one of the things
Wow.
that it also reaches out when you're talking about the survey process, one of the first things that we'll tell the surveyors is that we're going to have prayer in a little bit. Do you have any prayer needs, or do any of your team have any prayer needs that you'd like for us to address with you? And that opens the door to the surveyors. And it also opens the door for them to have more of an emotional encounter with you than it does just pure business. So that piece is invaluable when you look at it, and that's kind of the power of the ask that you all were talking about yesterday. We reach out and ask that, I've had several encounters from the surveyors where that's happened, and we've actually had prayer for their needs,
And we have that a lot. I mean, even in the early days, I believe a surveyor walks in, they're having a bad day, and we're like, oh boy, how's this going to go? And we find ourselves praying with the surveyor, and it definitely has a different outcome.
Absolutely. And then the last piece of that is your chaplain becomes a communication device also during the survey process. If you know and understand where they're going, like a particular resident, and if there's an issue with a particular resident, your chaplain is a non-threatening mode that you can use to communicate with that resident or that family and kind of find out what the surveyors are trying to find out or looking for. And then you can utilize that information to guide your own survey process. So those things, as far as the tools, chaplain's invaluable in my opinion when it comes down to the things that we do in our centers. But I want to say that it stretches more than that, because I think all of us have to play a piece in that spirituality piece.
Absolutely.
I mean, one of the things that I could say in one of our buildings that was a special focus that we came off was one of the comments that I got was that we had a nurse that when we had a resident that was passing, and the nurse did prayer with the family because our chaplain couldn't make it. And that said volumes to that family, that not only was the chaplain able to do it, but we encourage all of our staff to be involved in the spiritual process. So
Absolutely. The chaplain's one person.
That's right.
Everyone has the permission, if they choose. Everyone has permission to pray.
Absolutely.
Everyone, 18,000 stakeholders have permission to pray, which really goes back to the power of the ask. If you so choose, of course, but that's the power of the ask. So well said. It's everyone. It's a movement. We're an army of 18,000.
Absolutely. The chaplain is the key person, though, that breaks the barrier and allows the intervention from all the other people. So they're on the forefront. They're leading it, and they're the ones breaking those barriers so that we can do the other stuff.
Well, thank you, Jeff. That's excellent. And we have time. I might want to come back about some of the more internal things that you utilize the chaplain, that kind of some of the things that Dave hit on in the last session. But Kel, let's talk about you as a core advantage and your BD team. I know how excited they are because I have heard over and over again the marketing folks and the BD team says this differentiates us. This is a core advantage in the field and in the marketplace. So how do we really harness that and brand that, and really, because we want to be able to take care of that patient in need, and we want to give them that holistic care. So talk about your experience with that and your thoughts around that.
Well, I think, it absolutely grounds us. As Jeff said, it gives us all like a common denominator to all work with. And so not only, I think it provides greater consistency with our brand. Like you said, we have an army of 18,000 people. And so I think it really comes down to, it helps build trust more quickly, because I think people can feel it. When you walk into a signature facility, whether you walk into our facility, you first call in, you go and you meet a partner in a hospital, or whether it's a partner or it's a family or it's a resident.
Kathy referenced. You can feel it. There's a feel to it, an essence to it.
Right. So I think, a lot of times when you're doing business development or you're trying to talk to somebody and they're in a time of need, and people don't necessarily come looking or wanting to ever have to need our services often, but we know that when they do, that it's going to deepen us. We have a greater dignity and how we speak about it, and we have actual programming, and it permeates, like I said, through all 18,000 of us. And so I think number one, that tone and that encounter, it's felt in a big way, because you can say a lot of things and we do a lot of things other competitors do, but I think the tone and our approach and the dignity that we do it with is just the special sauce. So I think that's one. I think the second thing is we can talk about, whatever the need is, whether it's short-term complex care or it's long-term care, somebody with cognition or dementia issues, or somebody that has rehab, that we can talk about if it is something that they choose. Like, we can help people pray through their fears, or pray about pain, or pray about whatever their
And this is a good point, because the family member, I remember when I put my mother at Cherokee Park and she had acute Parkinson's, you have guilt as a family member. You don't know if you're doing the right thing, so you're not just praying with the resident. I mean, the family member often is the one making the decision, so the chaplain can actually pray with the family member saying, I got you. I know you're frightened. I know you may feel a range of guilt, or am I doing the right thing? But with my mother, I mean, she was so chronically not able to move, we just couldn't take care of her. It was the right thing. But as a family member, you do question. So I love that. It's about the patient, but it's also about praying with the family member on the decision-making piece.
Yeah, it is. And I think also then the other thing that I would say our team always says is our chaplains are special partners. What you and all of the spirituality team does is, you're sometimes people don't want to talk to an administrator type of person, or a nurse, or a clinician, or somebody in business development or marketing, but very often there's an extra level of safety that quickly we can build trust with a chaplain if somebody else isn't able to do it. And whether we do it inside the facility in a tour, or we do it outside, and sometimes in hospitals they won't let us go visit one of our residents or patients.
That's right.
But they'll let the chaplain in. And that's, again, it's about building trust, I think, more quickly. It gives us a core competitive advantage. And all of that, in my mind, is instead of having a, transactional types of, close or we get somebody to say yes to come to us or whatever. It's really, we want to help transform them on their journeys to go deeper and to feel safer more quickly.
Right.
So,
and I know my team is working to meet, I think, every resident within the first 48, 72 hours. It's something we're really committed to, whether they come in on a Friday or whatever the time frame is. Vin, are you seeing anything in the data? You kind of referenced some of the admissions. Anything that is enhancing market share? Are we seeing a needle at all on the market share piece?
I think with quality mix, I mean, we're seeing a lot more acute residents coming in.
Right.
So just quality mix is growing, but I mean, that's a team involvement. But I think when the chaplains are involved at the degree in some of our homes, you get the engagement scores, you get the true social movement in the home. How many employees have we hired and they come and say,
right.
I read a lot on the website about the chaplain program, the spirituality pillar, the learning, that the way those are combining.
Yeah,
and saying,
love learning.
There's a vision here. There's a true
Right.
future, and we get a lot of people that way. But that's great leadership. That's your all's vision with Joe, and it's really harnessing that whole piece. But we've talked several decades ago about the miracles that we've experienced. Joe's personal things in the book versus just things around it. It's those are the. I don't know what data point that's going to show. Those are so indirect. But when people are paid by Medicaid and Medicare dollars, they're always going to question, why are you doing this? Contrarian views and want to be skeptic. But I'm telling you, from the indirect miracles to the financial indicators, the quality measures that we're moving, the 5-star, 4-star homes that we have in relationship to our other competitors, it's without question, it's the right move.
And I love that, and we'll kind of close on that thought. And I'm so grateful to my panelists and. Some of it is intangible. Some of it is you can't explain it, and that's sort of that presence of God, that presence of the divine. It's an essence. It's a feel, and I love that point where we are, market share, because we're recruiting talent through the spirituality pillar, as well as getting market share as like you said, it's an IDT, but it's also because you can plug in. And let me encourage administrators and people, marketing and admission folks and BD who are watching, utilize your chaplain in the close. Because pray over if it's the right partnership for the patient or the customer or the resident to be in one of our facilities. So, be transparent, be honest about that. But let's utilize us in the close, if you will, if I could be so blunt. So there's a power and an essence and an intangibility to what God brings to a situation, because truly only He knows what's really going on with the family member or the family dynamic or the encounter. So, how much time, Bert, do we have here?
About a minute left.
So, we got about a minute. So, anybody have 10 seconds? Anybody have a closing comment here?
I want to say that I think that this pillar synergizes with the other pillars, and it really is. When we say we have a revolution, I think it really is part of a major part of the bloodstream of the revolution.
Well, I love that. And listen, really. Let's go back to what Joe and I, on the data we've been working on and the sessions yesterday. The power of the ask. Ask. Ask for everything. Ask for healing for yourself, for a family member, for your resident, for your coworker. Ask for that admissions and marketing director. Ask for the right. We want to take care of the patient. We want to take care of our community. Ask. Be bold. Go for it. And you will know great success. So I'm going to close with, we're praying over you. We're praying for the desires of your heart. We're praying for protection. And we're praying for blessings, pressed down, shaken together to overflow. We love you, and God bless you.